All right, this is chapter 1, lesson 4, solve equations with variables on each side. So, equations with variables on each side. Some equations like 8 plus 4d equals 5d have variables on each side of the equal sign. Okay, so we can see that there are variables. I have d and d, right? They're on different sides of the equal sign. To solve, I use the properties of equality to write an equivalent equation with the variables on one side of the equal sign, then solve the equation. So basically my goal is to get all the variables on one side and then solve it like I would a normal equation. Okay? So let's take a look at one of the examples. So the first example says solve 8 plus 4d equals 5d. Okay? I want to get my d's to one side. So I notice I have 4d and I have a 5d. Well, I really want my d's to be positive, so I can subtract 4d from both sides. This cancels, and I'm left with 8. 5d minus 4d is 1d, so I have 8 equals d. Okay? Subtracting 4d from the left side of the equation, so I can isolate the variable, so I can get the variable by itself. Okay? And I have to do it to the other side of the equation in order to keep it balanced. All right, let's look at example number 2. Example number 2 says solve 6n minus 1 equals 4n minus 5. Okay, again, I want to get my variables by themselves. So 6 is positive, 4 is positive, so 6 is bigger, I want to move the 4. So now I'm going to subtract 4n from both sides. This cancels. I'm left with negative 5. 6n minus 4n is 2n. Minus 1 equals negative 5. Now we've already done two-step equations, so I want to add 1 to both sides. This cancels. I'm left with 2n equals negative 4. Then I divide by 2, so I get n equals negative 2. If I think I did something wrong for any reason, I can always go back and double check my answer. I plug in negative 2. 6 times negative 2 minus 1. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. Negative 12 minus 1 is negative 13. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 minus 5 also is negative 13. So it does work. The other thing I wanted to talk about when solving equations with variables is when we have a rational coefficient. Remember that rational numbers are any number that can be written as a fraction. Okay? So in some equations, the coefficients of the variables are rational numbers. Remember, when working with fractions, you need to have a common denominator before you add or subtract. You don't need a common denominator for multiplying and dividing, just when you add and subtract. So before you add and subtract, you've got to have that common denominator. Okay, that's very, very important. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. So the first example I have is number 3. Green's Gym charges a one-time fee of $50 plus $30 per session for a personal trainer. A new fitness center charges a yearly fee of $250 plus $10 for each session with a trainer. For how many sessions is the cost of the two plans the same? Okay, so I have, in words, fee of $50 plus $30 per session is the same as a fee of $250 plus $10 per session. Okay, so let S represent the number of sessions. So then I have 50 plus 30S, so 50 plus 30S equals 250 plus 10S. Okay, so now I can come down here and I can subtract 10S from both sides. This cancels. I'm left with 50 plus 20s equals 250. Then I can subtract 50 from both sides. 20s equals 200. Then I can divide by 20. 200 divided by 20 gives me 10. So the cost is the same for 10 personal trainer sessions. Again, I can check. Green's Gym is $50 plus $10 a session at 30, plus 10 sessions at $30 per session. 50 plus 10 times 30 equals $350. Okay. The new fitness center is $250 plus 10 sessions at $10. $250 plus 10 times 10 equals $350. So they are the same. All right, let's look at number 4. It says, solve 2/3 x minus 1 equals 9 minus 1/6 x. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to change my fractions so they all have a common denominator. Okay, so I have 3 and I have 6. So I want to change the 3 so it becomes a 6. So I need to multiply 3 times 2 and 2 times 2. Okay, that's where they got the 4, 6x from. They multiplied 3 times 2 to get 6. 2 times 2 equals 4. So now I can add 1 6 to both sides. This cancels. 4 plus 1 is 5, and the denominator stays the same. 5 6x equals x minus 1 equals 9. I add 1 to both sides. That cancels. 9 plus 1 is 10. Then I multiply by the multiplicative inverse, 6/5. Okay, I get 10 times 6 is 60, divided by 5 gives me 12. So x equals 12. All right, now you have a couple of try it problems. Okay, there are 4 of them, or 5 of them there. Go ahead, pause the video, try them out, and when you're done, we'll come back and we'll go over them together. All right, letter A. Letter A says 8a equals 5a plus 21. Okay, so I want to get a by itself. So I subtract 5a from both sides. This cancels. I'm left with 3a equals 21. And I divide both sides by 3. A equals 7. Okay. Letter B says 3x minus 7 equals 8x plus 23. So for this one, I want to subtract 3x. I get negative 7 equals 5x plus 23. I want to subtract 23. Negative 7 plus a negative 23 is negative 30 equals 5x. And then I divide both sides by 5. Out of room. Go over here a little bit. So negative 30 equals 5x. I divide both sides by 5. Negative 30 divided by 5 is negative 6. So x equals negative 6. Letter C says the length of a flag is 0.3 foot less than twice its width. If the perimeter is 14.4 feet longer than the width, find the dimensions of the flag. Okay? So I need to write the equation first, and then I need to solve the equation. Okay? So length of a flag is 0.3 foot less than twice its width. Okay? I'm going to use W for width. Okay? So 0.3 foot less than twice its width. 2W, that's twice the width, minus 0.3 is the same, okay, as 14 as W, so that's the perimeter. All right, sorry, I'm gonna reread the problem. Length of a flag, right, is 0.3 foot less than twice its width, okay? In order to figure out the perimeter, I take the width times 2 plus the length times 2, right? So this is the length, that's one length. So there's 2 of those, plus 2w. So this is 2 times the length, plus 2 times the width, because that's how I find perimeter. And the perimeter is 14.4 feet longer than the width. So I take the perimeter, because this is what the perimeter is 14.4 plus w. Okay, now I can solve. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and solve this. So I want to use the distributive property first. 2 times 2w gives me 4w. 2 times 0.3 is 0.6 plus 2w equals 14.4 plus w. Okay, I have 4w plus 2w, they're like terms, so I can add them together. 4 plus 2 is 6, so 6w minus 0.6 equals 14.4 plus w. Now I'm going to subtract w from both sides. Okay. When I do that, I get 5w minus 0.6 equals 14.4. Now I'm going to add 0.6 to both sides. I get 5w equals 15, and I divide by 5. So w equals 3. Well, that's my width. So that's the first part of my problem, right? So I need my width and my length because I wanted to know the dimensions of the flag. All right? So I'm going to take my w equals 3, and I'm going to plug it back in for the length of the flag. Remember, the length of the flag was 2w minus 0.3. So if I plug in 3, so 2 times 3 minus 0.3. 2 times 3 is 6 minus 0.3 is 5.7. So my length equals 5.7 feet. So my width is 3 feet and my length is 5.7 feet. All right, let's look at letter D. Letter D says 1/2 p plus 7 equals 3/4 p plus 9. Okay, so first thing I want to do is I want to get p by itself, but I have 1/2 and 3/4. Those are not common fractions, right? They don't have a common denominator. In order to get 2 to 4, I have to multiply by 2. So 1/2 times 2 equals 2/4. Okay, so I have 2/4 p plus 7 equals 3/4 p plus 9. I'm going to subtract 2/4 p from both sides. Now I have 7 equals 1/4 p plus 9. Then I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. So I have -2 equals 1/4 p. Then I'm going to multiply by the multiplicative inverse, which is 4. Okay. 4 times -2 gives me -8. And 1/4 times 4 gives me p. All right, letter E says -5/4 c minus 1/2 equals -3/4 plus 5/8 c. Okay, so looking through all of this, I can do one of two things. I can either find a common denominator for all these and leave them as fractions, or I can recognize that I have an LCD. My LCD is 8. So I can take this entire thing and multiply each one by 8. Okay? 8 times 5 is 40, divided by 4 is 10. So I have negative 10c. Okay, so I did 8 times 5 divided by 4, and there's a negative sign, so I get negative 10c. 8 times 1 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. Okay. 8 times 3 is 24, divided by 4 is 6. And 8 times 5 is 40, divided by 8 is 5. C. So now I can simplify this. I'm going to add 10c to both sides. So I get negative 4 equals negative 6 plus 15c, and I'm going to add 6. So I get 2 equals 15c. I'm going to divide both sides by 15. So 2/15 equals C. And that's my final answer. Okay. And that is the end of lesson 4.